Room for Thought podcast. I am Mary Corrales with Synergy Global Housing, and I'm here today with my friend and colleague, Susie Mckernan. Today, we're going to talk about hiring trends and the impact that it has on travel mobility. For those of you who are joining us maybe for the first time and don't know what Synergy is or who we are, Synergy is an end-to-end solution for furnished housing for anything from travel to mobility, from rotational assignments to project work, from insurance to entertainment production work. We've got you covered across the globe. And my podcast participant, Susie Mckernan. Hi, Susie. So Susie is a search professional with deep roots in the travel and hospitality space. She's worked for global travel management companies, a luxury hotel company, a travel tech startup, and since 2011 has focused on search, recruiting, and talent acquisition. An executive director of recruiting and client management at Craig Bradford Associates in Pennsylvania. Susie has a passion for advocating for candidates, for mentoring others, and that's actually how our paths crossed. Susie, maybe you can explain a little bit about how we met, and it's lovely to have you here on Room for Thought.
Mary, I'm so glad to be here. And it was really quite a great day back in May this past year. It seems longer, but also shorter. We were both involved with GBTA Ladders. Ladders is the professional development arm of GBTA, which is the Global Business Travel Association. And you were attending, you were a participant, and actually you were on the winning team, which was so good. And I was brought in as one of the speakers to the workout sessions. And I think I spoke on how to work with your elevator pitch, both on a personal and professional standpoint, and how to really think the way you position yourself. We all can get very lazy and just doing what we always do and not refreshing it for the moment. And since then, we've had, I think, a really quick and beneficial relationship. You were so kind to have me come out and speak to one of your associations in the Los Angeles area, which for Southern California was a great time out there in August.
Well, we loved having you. And a huge plug right now for GBTA Ladders. I would say it was just such a huge pivotal thing for me, learning more about the travel industry. Shout out to Team Robert. We won this year, so that was really exciting. And we got to present at the big GBTA conference. But I think the Ladders team for this year are just getting started. So good luck to everybody who's doing Ladders this year. And for anyone who is looking forward to doing it in the following year, 2026, if you're not doing it this year, I would completely and totally recommend it. Susie, today we wanted to talk a little bit about hiring practices and perspectives as we get into 2025. So I know you're incredibly close to the world around what's going on from an HR and a hiring perspective. Can you kind of give us an overview of some of the trends that you're seeing right now?
So some people think that December is a bad time to look for a job. It's actually a pretty good time to look for a job. You've got teams and departments that have budget that they haven't used yet. You've got people looking at what they're going to be doing in the coming year. What does 2025 look like? What do they need in terms of people to accomplish? So if you're somebody who's out looking for a job, don't despair. It's a good time. Regards to trends, you go back to, we're 5 years from the start of the pandemic in February.
Can't believe it.
In February of 2020, I believe the unemployment rate was around 3.7, 3.75. We're not that far off from that. We're about 4.1, 4.2, I think, right now. And in those 5 years, we did not all of a sudden have a workforce appear that has 10 years experience, that is geographically where people want them to be, and have the contacts that people want them to be. So we still have a deficit in the people. And this tends to be, I would say, not only your white collar jobs, but your blue collar jobs, what I call your gray collar, the in between. As far as trends, there still is a divide in what candidates are saying they want and need and what employers are prepared to offer. Some of that, the big question is hybrid work, remote work, return to the office. What we are seeing is that there is a big push for return to the office. There are deficits in people being able to move forward because they're not in the office. Remote work, while it's attractive, it's not necessarily the best way to build or contribute to a culture. But at the same time, if you're based out in Los Angeles or if you're like here in the greater Philadelphia area, If you live in the western suburbs and you need to work in Center City, sometimes that commute can be an hour and a half in traffic. I can understand candidates not wanting to waste that time. So I think flexibility is the key, both on the candidate side and on the employer side. One of the things that I've seen with people who graduated to say 2018 onwards, they have lost something. They have lost the ability to really learn in an office setting, the ability to communicate in a professional manner. Now, it's not across the board, but there are pockets of it. What we're also seeing is benefits and what a benefit entails. Yes, it's your health, your medical, your vision, etc. But it's also that flexibility part. Can I commit to a hybrid schedule, but have flexibility if something occurs? And I would tell you that 9 out of 10 employers are willing to do that as long as a candidate and as an employee do your share.
It's not so when you're looking for a job, being open and being flexible to have those conversations about what you need and what you don't need. I would say too, from a mobility and a travel perspective, we're seeing the same. We're definitely seeing, more of a push to return to work, maybe not 5 days a week, but some sort of hybrid schedule that we're seeing as well. And how do you think that's affecting things from a travel perspective, maybe from a travel behaviors of what you're seeing, when people maybe go for their first look-see trip or things like that? What are you experiencing with that?
Well, the look-see trip, I think, is really important. And employers who are savvy understand that that's a make or break meeting. Everything from the way that you deliver the travel arrangements, professionalism of that, the accuracy and the timeliness of information, whether it's where you're staying, how you're getting back and forth to the airport, not leaving things to the last minute. From a corporate travel standpoint, those organizations that have a buttoned up policy for candidates and for interviews tend to do better. I recently had an organization where their travel wasn't that buttoned up and it caused some, let's say, hesitation on the part of the candidate. Because they're like, if they can't figure out how I'm going to fly in and out of somewhere, how are they going to do that when I have to travel 45% of my time? We're also seeing in regards to travel, an increase in candidates being willing to go to a conference, being willing to go to that offsite meeting because they are working remote or they are working hybrid. So there's part of them, there's some latent, buzzard in their head that's saying, I need to see people, I need to get out. Now, I work a lot in sales, client services, account management. So those are your people, but we are even seeing it in some infrastructure roles like your accountants, your IT people, who aren't normally so ready to get out from behind the desk.
So if somebody maybe is working from home, you're seeing sort of a need to see other people in person in one way or another. Yeah.
And being willing to say, oh yeah, I'll go to that conference. I'll go to that install. And they are, the leisure aspect. They want to know, hey, can I stay 2 days extra? I'll pick up the hotel on my dime or the accommodation. Can you get the rate extended for me? So definitely
you're seeing lots of blending.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would say, we're seeing the same in our industry from a travel and a mobility perspective. We're starting to see that blend together of mobility and travel. So, before maybe mobility and, when mobility, for those of you who are not on the, or who are more on the travel side, is relocating. So someone who's moving from one place to another for their work. And then from a travel perspective, it could be someone who's traveling for 3 nights. It could be someone who's going on an extended stay travel, right, for 30 days. And what we're starting to see is companies realizing that if they put their minds together and put their buying power together for things like housing and other things, right, that you have much more buying power if you can use it together. So somebody may be relocating and staying in an apartment for 45 days. And then you may have someone who's on an extended stay for business travel for 30 days who could actually be using the same apartment. And you could be getting a long-term lease and rotating your guests kind of in and out. So we're seeing more of a merger on that side. So it's great to see from a leisure perspective too. I don't know if that word existed before COVID or if that got made up during COVID, but it's one of my favorite things to do. So I can understand why others are wanting to do it as well.
Mary, that's a really good point. It's one of your favorite things to do. So those of us who are in the industry, on the fringe of the industry, come at it from a different perspective. Um, you're the target market. You're the people who are out there experiencing it. You're also selling it. And I think what people have to keep in mind when you're looking at hiring is, what do you expect? So if you're in a position to be interviewing somebody and you don't have a big travel team behind you, or you don't have the luxury of having HR, having a relationship with an organization like Synergy, raise your hand and say, hey, we need to do this. Or how can I do this? Because when if I'm putting myself in it, if I've gone away for 2 weeks for work, I want to be in a place where I can cook at night. I want to be in a place where I can order out in an area that I'm familiar with. And I think that's a big thing with hiring managers. Sometimes they forget what it's like to look for a job, what it's like to be on the other side of the table. Because nobody likes to be looking. Everybody likes to be the hiring person. So one of my things that I work with hiring managers is to say, well, what would you expect if you came in to interview?
Any other advice or tips, Susie, that you're thinking of for either hiring managers or candidates as they're getting ready to negotiate, hopefully in 2025?
So think about why you started looking in the first place if you're a candidate. What made me, whether it was somebody like me reaching out to you and you decided to have a conversation about a new opportunity, or you yourself, voluntary or involuntary, have to look for a new job. Why are you looking? What are your objectives? Is it a money increase? Is it a location change? Is it a responsibility change? Whatever it is, keep those in mind when you are doing your negotiation. Because let's just say that, the job came in at 125K and you had 100K in your head, but they're going to pay 100% of your benefits, where in the previous role, you were paying 20% of your benefits. That's a 20% savings to you. So maybe the actual dollar amount evens out and you actually end up better. One of the reasons you're looking for a new job, you don't want to manage people anymore, but this role has you managing 2 people. Well, if you really didn't like it, be careful about what you take on. From the employer standpoint, keep in mind, what's the role going to solve for you? Is it going to generate money? Is it going to contribute to revenue generation? Is there cost savings? What's the end goal? And then make sure that the person that you're speaking to, that you've talked to them about those challenges, that you've walked through not your whole plan, but hey, scenario questions, behavioral questions. How do they handle pressure? How do they handle surprises? How do they handle deadlines that get moved? Because if you're only asking, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What do you like to do? You're not going to get the full measure of the person. One of my big repeated all the time to hiring managers is, get your final 2 candidates in a social situation. When you take them to lunch, we've got a number of clients who, when they're hiring salespeople, they take them to golf or tennis. They get them in an environment that isn't in a selling situation, or it's a subliminal selling situation. Because you want to see how those people interact outside of the office when they let their guard down a little bit. One of the most interesting things to watch is, how do people treat wait staff? How do you treat a reception? How do you treat somebody at check-in at a hotel? If they're disrespectful, if they ignore them, does that fit into the way you want somebody representing your company? So
That's so interesting, Susie. I love that. I think about things from a neurodiversity perspective, right? Everyone maybe is not at their best at the exact moment that somebody, snaps their fingers and says, give me an answer for this. So I love the experience of being out and seeing, how somebody operates on a day-to-day basis. I think that's a huge takeaway for the folks that are listening of, if you have the opportunity to take those top candidates and see them in a setting other than the interview piece, that's really interesting. And, we're seeing things from a generational perspective change. So, over time, maybe the people who are coming into our apartments had 2.5 kids. Now the people who are coming into our apartments have 2.5 dogs, or there's like a dog and a cat and a, something else, a lizard that they're bringing with us. And so, we've had to sort of see the adjust of of change into what our apartments can manage. It's great that there are so many places now that take animals that maybe 10 years ago didn't. I think COVID, that's another thing that really kind of changed for our industry as well, was just the ability to understand that, a family can be a mix of generations together as well. Anything else from a generational standpoint that you're seeing? I'm sure there's lots of differences from one to the other, but things that people can keep in mind while they're, hiring for different generations.
Yeah, it's interesting right now. There's, I guess it depends on which media you're paying attention to. There is a bit of a backlash right now for Gen Z. And I'm not going to come down on whether it's right or whether it's wrong. It's happening. There is a deficit of understanding the way an office works. And the candidates of that generation who are going to set themselves apart are the ones who take time to search out knowledge, whether it's their parent, whether it's people in school, whether it's talking to their recruiter about what's expected. I don't think companies need to bend over backwards, but they need to make some accommodation to help those new entrants understand what is accepted and what is not accepted. If you're not telling me it is not appropriate to wear ripped jeans and sandals into the office, that could be business casual. You need to set standards. I saw something, and I didn't read the whole article, and I think it was Fortune or Forbes just this past weekend, where Mark Andreessen, I think it was, in Silicon Valley, basically came out and said, don't bring your whole self to work. I don't need your whole self. I need your business self. And so there is a line of, I don't need to know everything about you. I'm in my late 80s. It was never appropriate to bring everything to work. Now, if you're having a hard time at home or something, and you need to let your manager know or your best friend in the office, that's one thing. But for everybody to know everything, that's in the way of actually doing the job. On the other side of it, there is some empathy that is needed to understand how people are functioning or not functioning. So it's that EQ. It's understanding what's appropriate.
Yeah, right. We want people to bring their best self to work, and we want them to bring their authentic self to work as well. So I'm sure there's probably a big balance between that. You've hit on a couple of points, Susie, about maybe why should people be looking for a recruiter when they're or interested in having a recruiter when you're looking for a position.
So a recruiter is your agent. They are your advocate. But keep in mind, they're also paid. They're paid by the employer. Now, good recruiters make sure that the candidates they put in front of the potential employer are prepped completely. They understand the organization. They can give you a background on the hiring manager. We're the ones who go to bat for you. If you say you needed 135 and you got an offer of 110, or you're going to get an offer of 110, we go back to the employer before he even gets to you and says, you're X amount below. Are you making it up somewhere? And then also the things where you say, you know what, the money's great, but I need 5 weeks vacation and they maybe only do 3 weeks. We go back and negotiate on your behalf. And then there's no bad taste between, on the negotiation side. If you do work with a recruiter, one of the things you should always ask is, what type of search is this? Is it retained, exclusive? Is it on a contingency basis? If it's on a contingency basis, particularly, you want to find out how well that individual recruiter knows the hiring manager. How many placements have they done? Because in a contingency search, it's all about a race to get the resume on somebody's desk. In my firm, we tend to know the hiring managers really well. And in most instances, we know the C-suite and or the owners. So we tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. We know the culture. We've been in the offices. And also when candidate gets in there, and let's say it's not going well for 30 days, we're going to call you up and we're going to say, why? What's not right? What's not wrong? We're not going to tattle on you to the employer, but we're going to call the employer and say, hey, you promised them 6 weeks training. They're there 30 days. They haven't been trained on anything. They're staring at the computer all day. You're asleep at the wheel.
I was going to say, it's really having an advocate there too. And it makes me think too of mentorship, Susie, and you've been an awesome mentor to me. I can't believe it's been less than a year really that we've known each other. But I just sort of gravitated to you during Leonard's when you were talking about the elevator pitch. And, It felt like you had so much to share. And I know that, mentorship is really important to you as well. Maybe can you help our audience understand some ways that they can mentor or be a part of their community to kind of make things better for those who are coming up or who need help?
Well, one of the things, and Mary, thank you for the kind word, that you raised your hand. You gave me a call. We talked about things at ladders and then after ladders, just industry wide and positioning. It's you find somebody like you just said that you click with, and then be honest about what you need. And the person you reach out to initially might not be able to help you, but they might be able to connect you with the person. Coming up in my career, I had people in and out, but nobody consistently. So one of the things that I've tried to do when I mentor people is find out, where are you now? Where do you want to go? How do you think you're going to go there? And then kind of fill in the gaps. I do recommend if you're somebody who wants to mentor and help others, figure out who helped you and how. Are you in the position to replicate that? What is your special sauce? Mary, you're somebody who listens really well. You're somebody who I would think in a sales process is the detail person who's going to go back to the team after and say, wait a minute, we missed these three things. We need to address them. It's the same thing when you're mentoring somebody. You have to hear, you have to listen, and then you have to, if that makes sense. That's one of the things that I really try to do. And then question, makes that individual accountable for what they say they want and help them figure out how to get there, but ask the hard question. Well, you want that. Why do you want that? Why do you want that job? Figuring out what's important.
Right. So listening and learning what's important to them. I think volunteering too is probably, one of the biggest things I've seen from a mentorship perspective of trying to, help. I know you volunteer your time quite a bit, for GBTA as well. And there's, some great organizations out there with Worldwide ERC as well that are really just great, things to get mentoring and to get people, kind of helping. So this is great. Susie, a couple of questions about you so that we can get to know you a little bit better. We're going to play a little short game while you're taking a sip there called This or That. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions and you give me your preferred answer about sort of this or that. So when you travel, checked luggage or carry on?
Carry on only. One of my proudest travel moments, I did 3 weeks in Asia with just a carry on and a laptop bag. And that was back in the 90s when the laptop.
Love it. I love it. I'm the same. I don't let anybody who's traveling with me check their luggage. I don't want to wait afterwards. It's great when we get to stay in our apartments. There are washers and dryers, in most of them globally, or even in some places there'll be laundry service, right? And so if you can pack only what you need and take it on, I'm with you on the carry on for sure. Okay, so second question: work from home or work from office?
I'm going to go in the middle and say hybrid. Can I?
Yes.
So I'm bad. I've always been an in-office person, and lifestyle wise right now with some things that I've got going home, I tend to work more remotely at the moment, but I am only 6 minutes from my physical office if I hit all the traffic lights. So like I was there this morning for a meeting and then I'm working from home the rest of the afternoon. So I'm going to say split down the middle hybrid.
I love it. I'm sort of in the middle with you as well. I think you need a little bit of both. I travel quite a bit. And if I didn't travel, I need people and I need, we were talking about, how you need to have people in front of you and you need to have that interaction, right? I think a little balance, but because I travel so much, I also need that, time at home to be able to be here and be present. Okay. Third, early bird or night owl? I'm interested in the answer to this one.
I have been both, and that has been driven by my career. Early in my career, I worked about 10 different time zones. So all over the place. I tend to be earlier now, and early for me is 6:30. And I like to shut down the office by 6 o'clock at night. Now, what I will tell you, if I have calls that I have to do that go into the late in the night, which sometimes they do, I won't start the next day to 8 or 9. So let's say by nature I'm a night owl, by need I'm an early bird.
I love it. So balance it out. I have a friend who does all of her calls with Asia on one day each week. And so this way, she knows it's always on Tuesday or it's always on Thursday, and she can schedule all of her calls. So it's not every single night that, maybe your schedule is interrupted. So I love
Oh,
that.
we're really good because you and I have done really early calls for you being on the West Coast and on, Arizona time zone.
Yep. We've just got to be flexible, right? So that's great. Okay, fourth, favorite getaway, beach or mountains?
I would probably say the beach, but it's really going to be city.
Okay.
I
The
like to
city.
go.
That's a good answer. I
Yeah.
love it. What's your favorite city? And you don't have to say Philadelphia.
Oh,
We'll
it's
let
not.
you have okay.
It's also but it's still not my favorite city. It's a toss up between London and New York. And I was very fortunate that I've lived in both places. And I think to really get to know a place, you need to live it.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Okay, last one, train or plane?
Train in Europe, plane
Yeah.
everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the US is hard to get from one place to another. Although on the East Coast there's some really good train routes, but yeah.
Philadelphia, we have regional rail. And when I first started my career, I took the train into the office. But I have spent an incredible amount of time, both on a personal standpoint and a business standpoint in Europe. And I actually worked for the SNCF, the French railroads at one point, nothing better than the rail system in Europe. And it's such a great way to not only see countries, but to talk to people and get to know. Before I actually started my working career, I took a train from Moscow to Prague, and it was 3 days. That was one of the most interesting experiences, and I won't trade it for anything. So trains in Europe, planes everywhere else.
I love it. Well, Susie, thank you so much for coming on Room for Thought. It's been so great to have you here. I think I've taken away some really great things about, the reasons behind why to have a recruiter and why you can be so helpful to someone who's going through the process. For people who are looking for jobs, just to be flexible and to be honest and open about what it is that you need. And then for those who are hiring managers, just to make sure that you're putting yourself in that candidate's chair, right? And saying, what would I what would I want if I'm, looking for a role here? So, we're excited for 2025. We're hoping that, we've heard of the slogan, stay alive to 2025. I haven't heard the slogan yet for what 2025 is going to be, but we're really looking forward to it. But just appreciate all of your openness and honesty and authenticity being here today on Room for Thoughts. So thank you guys all for joining. Thank you again, Susie. It's just been always a pleasure to have you here.
Mary, thanks for the opportunity. And you've been a highlight of 2024 for me, and look forward to more in 2025.
Same to you. Thank you guys so much for joining Room for Thought. Please comment, share. Don't forget to subscribe to us here. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. Bye.